Who is the strongest enemy we face in the Elder Scrolls game series based on lore? That is the question we will be looking at today. As always, I've picked out a few of the contenders deserving of that role, and we are going to look at their lore, where we encounter them, and why I think they are deserving of the most powerful enemy role. Before we start, feel free to pick who you think it will be. Make sure you do all of that YouTube stuff, like, subscribe, and so on. And let's get into it. First up is Alduin the World Eater. In the beginning, when the world was still forming, and the bones of the land were still soft, Alduin rose, not born like a man or beast, but created from time itself. He was the first of his kind. Akatosh, the dragon god of time, shaped him as the firstborn of the dragons, the World Eater, the end that would come when the world had run its course. But Alduin was more than just a destroyer. He was the cycle, the fire that would burn the old so the new could begin. In the days when dragons ruled over mortals with fire and fear, Alduin stood above them all. The ancient Nords didn't just fear him, they worshipped him. To them, he was a god of gods, a being whose hunger would one day devour the world. His power wasn't just in his wings or his flame, but in his voice. His Tuum could bend reality, break stone, and summon death. Even other dragons bowed before him, not out of loyalty, but because resisting Alduin meant being erased. That era ended when mortals found their own voice. The tongues of the north rose in rebellion, learning to shout with power that rivaled the dragons. They struck back, led by heroes who refused to kneel. Alduin could not be killed, not truly, so they cast him out of time itself, sending him forward with an elder scroll, locking him outside the flow of history. He vanished, but the world remembered. Skyrim carried his memory like a scar. Ancient barrows held whispers of his return. Priests of the old ways waited for signs in the sky. When Helgen burned, the prophecy stirred. Alduin had returned. Dragons rose from their graves, their bones reknitting with his call. He moved across Skyrim like a storm. Villages were crushed, holds panicked, and at the center of it all stood the Dragonborn, the last of a dying line, born with the soul of a dragon and the body of a mortal, the only one who could stop him. Alduin wasn't just attacking towns, he was devouring souls. High on the throat of the world, the Dragonborn learned the truth. Alduin was feeding on the dead, growing stronger in Sovngarde, the Nordic afterlife. His plan wasn't just to destroy Skyrim, but to feed on the souls of heroes and return even more powerful. His hunger wasn't for land or gold, but for the end of all things. To stop him, the Dragonborn had to reach Sovngarde, something no living soul was meant to do. That meant climbing to Skuldafn, a dragon temple hidden beyond the reach of most. There, the portal waited, guarded by Alduin's most loyal followers. After battling through his cult and slaying the dragon priest Nachkrien, the Dragonborn entered the misty fields of Sovngarde. Alduin was already there, cloaked in a storm of souls, a black shape in a sky that never cleared. He wasn't just strong, he was ancient power given shape. The last battle didn't happen in a castle or on a battlefield, but in the land of the dead. With the help of ancient heroes, the Dragonborn used Dragon Rent, a shout forged by mortals to bring dragons to the ground. In Sovngarde, with echoes of history watching, Alduin fell. Not as a beast, but as an ending that was denied. His body broke, scattered to the winds of time, but his shadow still lingers. In Skyrim, people remember. They see dragons in the clouds and wonder if he will return. His defeat didn't erase the prophecy, it delayed it. Alduin is powerful not because of his fire or flight, but because he was made to end the world. He bends time, commands death, and raises the dead. He is the dragon that even other dragons fear. In the game Skyrim, we meet Alduin across the land, at Helgen, on the throat of the world, at Kynesgrove, and finally in Sovngarde. We fight him because he threatens not just the province, but reality itself. His return signals the end, and stopping him means saving the world. Facing Alduin is facing the concept of an ending, and surviving it. That's why his defeat matters, and why even in death, he remains one of the most powerful enemies ever faced. Next we have Dagoth-Ur. Long ago, in the shadow of Red Mountain, there lived a man named Vorin Dagoth. He was a noble of House Dagoth, trusted by the Chimer and a close ally of Lord Nerevar. But his path did not end in loyalty. When the tribunal and Nerevar uncovered the heart of Lorikon beneath the mountain, the fate of Morrowind changed forever. The heart was a relic of the gods, torn from the body of Lorikon when the world was made. It pulsed with divine power, and touching it meant changing forever. After Nerevar's death, the tribunal used the heart to make themselves gods, but Dagoth-Ur had touched it first. And what it did to him was different. He didn't just gain power. He became something else. The tribunal thought they had driven him away. They sealed the heart chamber, believing Dagoth-Ur dead or lost. But he was still there, beneath the mountain, changing. He grew in strength while the tribunal grew weaker. He listened to the heart's pulse like a drumbeat and let it reshape him. He no longer needed food or sleep. Time passed, and he remained. His mind shifted, slipping between dreams and commands. He began to call himself the Immortal Lord. His house returned to him as the Sixth House, made of sleepers and ash. His cult spread quietly through Morrowind, whispering in dreams, building shrines, infecting minds. His power didn't come from armies. It came from belief, from corruption, and from the magic deep beneath the earth. He sent blight storms across the land, red winds that twisted plants and beasts. His servants, the ash creatures, grew from his will. Some were once men, others were made in his image. His reach turned strong men into sleepers, who wandered the cities by day and whispered prayers to him by night. The tribunal, once gods in the eyes of their people, began to falter. Their connection to the heart grew thin. Vivek held his city with poetry and war. Almalexia burned with pride and fear. Sothasil vanished into his machines. Meanwhile, Dagoth-Ur waited. He watched from his citadel in the mountain, his voice echoing through the dreams of his enemies. Then came the Nerevarine, the prophesied rebirth of Nerevar. The gods saw a chance. If the Nerevarine could defeat Dagoth-Ur, the tribunal might survive, or perhaps the prophecy would undo them all. The Nerevarine's journey led through ashlands and haunted tombs, through the ruins of old Velothi towers and Daedric shrines. Each step revealed more of the Sixth House's spread. The dreams grew stronger. Faces became masks, names lost meaning. The blight thickened, and at the center of it all was Dagoth-Ur, waiting like a patient god. He did not send armies to stop the Nerevarine. He welcomed them. He spoke through dream and voice, offering peace, power, unity. He saw himself not as a villain, but as a savior. He believed the tribunal were liars, false gods who betrayed Nerevar. He believed the Nerevarine was meant to join him. Inside Red Mountain, past the ghost fence, and deep into the heart chamber, the truth was bare. Dagoth-Ur was no longer truly mortal. The heart fed him directly. He could not be killed by sword or spell alone. As long as the heart beat, he would return. His flesh might fall, but his soul remained tied to that divine engine. The final battle wasn't just a test of strength. It was a test of will. The Nerevarine had to shatter the tools that bound Dagoth-Ur to the heart. Without keening and sunder, there was no way to sever the link. With them, the Nerevarine struck the heart, breaking the flow of power. Dagoth-Ur tried to stop it, but his body failed. His voice faded, his dream collapsed. And the heart, once the source of divinity, fell silent. Red Mountain trembled. The blight ended. The tribunal's power faded, and Morrowind changed. But even after his fall, Dagoth-Ur's shadow lingers. In old ruins his symbols still remain. In dreams his voice sometimes returns. He is powerful, not because of brute strength, but because he nearly remade a nation through belief and corruption. He reshaped Morrowind's gods and people, stood against mortals and immortals alike, and nearly won. In the game Morrowind, we face Dagoth-Ur during the main quest. We fight him inside the heart chamber of Red Mountain, the same place where his power began. We fight him not just to save the land, but to end a long story of betrayal, godhood, and revenge. That is why Dagoth-Ur remains one of the most powerful enemies in the Elder Scrolls. Next up is Mehrunes Dagon. Mehrunes Dagon is one of the Daedric princes, ancient and powerful beings that exist beyond mortal worlds. He is the prince of destruction, change, revolution, and ambition. Unlike other Daedra who might work through trickery or manipulation, Mehrunes Dagon's path is clear and direct. He seeks to bring sudden and violent change by tearing down the old and remaking it in fire and blood. His realm, called the Deadlands, is a place of endless fire, ash, and volcanic fury. It's a harsh and unforgiving landscape where nothing lasts, fitting for a god who thrives on destruction. In the history of Tamriel, Mehrunes Dagon's influence is often felt in moments of great chaos and war. The most famous of these is the Oblivion Crisis, a disaster that nearly destroyed the empire of Cyrodiil. The crisis began when Mehrunes Dagon opened gates, portals, from his realm of oblivion into the mortal world. These gates appeared suddenly, everywhere across Cyrodiil. From them poured armies of Daedra, creatures made of flame, shadow, and malice. Towns were attacked, burned, and overrun. People fled or died as the Daedra ravaged the land. The emperor was assassinated during this time, throwing the empire into turmoil. The forces of the empire scrambled to respond, but the threat was unlike any other. It was not just war, it was a war from another world. The gates were the key. As long as they remained open, more Daedra would keep coming. The empire's survival depended on closing these gates one by one. The hero known as the Champion of Cyrodiil steps forward. This hero's quest is to seal the gates and stop the invasion. Traveling across the province, the champion fights through Daedric armies and closes gate after gate. Each gate sealed is a victory, but the threat grows more desperate. Mehrunes Dagon's plan is clear: full invasion. If the gates remain open, Dagon's armies will pour in endlessly, destroying the empire and remaking Tamriel in his violent image. Mehrunes Dagon is not just a general sending troops. He is a god. His power bends reality. He can tear open the very fabric between worlds, summoning his armies at will. His appearance is terrifying. He stands as a massive, armored figure engulfed in flame. His body is covered in spikes and molten cracks. He carries weapons that are sharp and cruel, able to cut through both flesh and magic. The blades, once protectors of the emperor, stood at the Cloud Ruler Temple, a fortress high in the mountains. It was here that the final battle took place. The temple was overrun, its walls broken and scarred by fire and Daedric invasion. When the champion reached the temple, Mehrunes Dagon himself stepped through a portal. The battle was not just a fight of weapons, but a clash of gods. Dagon summoned his Daedra minions, called down firestorms, and struck with incredible strength. The champion fought with everything they had, using sword, magic, and will to face this god. The fight was fierce and desperate. When Dagon fell, the Oblivion Gates closed forever. The empire was saved from ruin, at least for a time. Mehrunes Dagon's power comes from being a god beyond mortal limits. He can reshape reality and bring destruction on a massive scale. His ability to open portals means he can send armies anywhere. His fire and weapons are deadly beyond measure. The fact that he dared to invade the mortal world shows how dangerous he is. We meet Mehrunes Dagon in Oblivion during the main quest. As the champion, we travel through Cyrodiil, closing gates and battling Daedra. We fight him at the Cloud Ruler Temple, high in the mountains. We fight because stopping him means saving the Empire, saving Tamriel from being burned and remade in fire. Facing Mehrunes Dagon is facing destruction itself. His defeat means the world can keep going, for now. But his power reminds us how close the world came to ending in flame. Let's also talk about Karstag. Karstag's story goes back long before Skyrim, long before the Empire laid claim to Solstheim. He was not just a frost giant, but a king among his kind, towering and ancient, ruling a frozen keep in the north of the island, where even the Skal tread carefully. In the wild centuries when men and mer still feared the wilderness more than each other, Karstag made his home in a stronghold of ice and stone. His domain was not marked by banners or walls, but by silence and cold. When travelers reached the drifting snowfields near his hall, they knew they had gone too far. Karstag was more than muscle and frost. He was magic, deep and old, bound to the frozen world around him. He didn't speak, didn't parley, didn't reason. He simply was. Stories say he crushed raiders with one hand, turned wolves into ice with a glance, and stood against time itself. When the Nords of the Skull village told tales around the fire, they spoke of Karstag like a spirit, a presence that never faded. Even the Reeklings, strange goblin creatures of the north, saw him as a god, and built their lives around the scraps of his former keep. But Karstag's death wasn't the end of him. During the events of Blood Moon, a great hunt hosted by the Daedric Prince Hersine, Karstag was dragged into a twisted game of survival. A mortal hero, thrown into that hunt, crossed paths with the giant and killed him, not out of hate, but necessity. That should have been the end. His skull remained as a trophy, his hull slowly reclaimed by ice, but the land remembered. His power lingered. Years later, in Skyrim's time, his name was barely spoken, but his legend still held weight, and those who found his skull might feel something stir. In the Dragonborn DLC, the player can recover Karstag's skull and return it to his old throne in the ruins of Castle Karstag. What follows is not just a fight, it's a summoning. His ghost doesn't appear as a whisper or a vision. It bursts forth with the fury of a storm. His soul had been waiting, frozen in time, bound to the place where he once ruled. The air itself turns to ice as his spectral form takes shape. Unlike most enemies, Karstag gives no speech, no warning, no motive. His fury is the motive. His death, stolen from him long ago, now demands a reckoning. The fight against him is optional, but those who dare to summon him must prepare for one of the hardest battles in Skyrim. Karstag strikes with ice magic strong enough to shatter wards and stagger the strongest warriors. His physical attacks come like avalanches, knocking foes across the room. He can summon blizzards around himself, making it hard to even get close. And worst of all, he cannot be staggered. His ghost form ignores most attempts to slow him down. Magic bounces off his icy aura. Arrows break on his bones, shouts barely faze him. Many players try, and many fail. But defeating him brings more than just loot. Those who beat him can summon his spirit in battle 3 times, calling upon that ancient frost giant's rage to flatten enemies. Karstag is powerful not just because of his strength, but because of what he represents. He's a remnant of a time before the Empire, before the Dragonborn, before the gods shaped the world into something men could rule. He's the North made flesh, the blizzard given form, and when he rises, he does so without words, just force. In the game Skyrim, we fight him only if we choose to, deep in the icy ruins of his old home, Castle Karstag, on the island of Solstheim. It is not part of the main quest. It's a challenge left for those who search. We fight him not because we have to, but because the mountain is there, because some legends deserve to be tested. And those who summon Karstag must be ready to face one of the most dangerous enemies in the Elder Scrolls. Not a prince, not a dragon, but a ghost too powerful to rest. Next up is Munkar Camoran. In the shadow of the Empire, behind the masks of peace and order, Munkar Camoran was waiting. His story doesn't begin with fire or war, but with a book. The commentaries on the Mysterium Xarxes, a strange cryptic text written by Mehrunes Dagon himself, whispered of a new world. Munkar read it, understood it, and believed it. He claimed to be the son of Camoran, the usurper, and a princess of the Bosmer, but his true birth mattered less than what he became, a prophet of destruction, the mouthpiece of a god. To his followers, he was more than a man. He was the key to paradise, the one who would break the chains of Mundus and lead them into a new dawn. He founded the Mythic Dawn, a secret cult that moved through the world like smoke. They were scholars, merchants, common folk. No one knew their names until it was too late. When Emperor Uriel Septim VII fell by their hand, the world staggered. The dragonfires died. The Daedric gates began to open. Mankar had vanished, retreating to a place outside time, a realm called Gayer Alata. It was a world shaped by his will, a pocket of oblivion created with the Xarxes and the blessing of Dagon. There, he ruled as king and god, surrounded by golden fire and red stone, guarded by his children Raven and Ruma. He called himself Liberator, not Destroyer. To him, Mundus was a prison crafted by deceitful gods, and the Oblivion Crisis was the key to freedom. His words weren't madness to his followers, they were truth. He believed the world must burn to be reborn. He taught that Nirn was a lie told by Akatosh and the Aedra to keep mortals weak. He didn't see destruction as evil, but as change. Every Oblivion gate that opened was a step toward that change. As the Empire fought back, every city from Bruma to Cheydinhal became battlegrounds. The Aedra spilled through the gates, led by Dremora, who answered only to Dagon. Behind it all, behind the invasion itself, stood Mankar. While Mehrunes Dagon waited to step through, Munkar laid the foundation. It was his plan, his belief, his war. To stop him, the hero of Quach had to follow the path laid in blood and riddles. The mythic dawn was rooted out one by one. Their hideouts were destroyed. Their names were carved into black lists. Eventually, the hero took the book itself, the Mysterium Xarxes, and found a way to Gaia Alata. Entering that realm wasn't like stepping into a city or cave. It was like stepping into someone's dream, a place that bent under the weight of belief. The sky blazed with strange stars, mountains glowed, rivers whispered. And at the center, Mankar waited on his throne. He didn't beg or panic, he lectured. He spoke of gods as tyrants and of freedom through chaos. His magic cracked the air. He summoned fire and storm pulled from the bones of oblivion. His children fought first, Ruma with her sharp spells and Raven with his fury, but they fell. And when Mankar rose to fight, it wasn't just with blades. He brought centuries of Daedric knowledge, taught by Dagon himself. He was more than a sorcerer. He was a philosopher of fire, a priest of ruin. But he bled like any other man, and in that place where he was strongest, he was finally struck down. His death shook Gaia Alata. The realm trembled, cracking like glass. When the hero returned to Tamriel, they carried more than a victory. They had struck at the root. Without Mankar, the mythic dawn lost their prophet. Without him, the gates could be closed. But his words lingered, his books remained, and some still read them, still believe. Mankar Camoran is powerful not just because of his magic or his realm, but because he nearly succeeded. His plan didn't rely on brute force. It came through thought, through devotion, through reshaping belief itself. He combined knowledge from the Daedra with his own genius, creating a cult that threatened the entire empire. In Oblivion, we face him in Gaia Alata, after uncovering the secrets of the mythic dawn. We fight him because he is the mind behind the Oblivion Crisis, the one whose fall is needed to close the gates. He is dangerous, not just for what he did, but for what he believed, and how close he came to changing the world forever. Next is Manimarco. In the early days of the Second Era, long before the world knew his true name, Manimarco walked the halls of the Sijic Order as just another Altmer student, quiet and curious. But even then, his hunger for forbidden knowledge set him apart. While others studied the stars and the winds, Manimarco looked to the void, to the cold silence of death. He wasn't content to read about the limits of life. He wanted to break them. When he left Artaeum, he didn't go in shame. He went with a purpose. He gathered followers, twisted minds who shared his thirst, and formed the Order of the Black Worm. Where he walked, graveyards stirred, and the dead whispered. He promised his disciples eternal life not through illusion, but by turning them into something more. In Cyrodiil, whispers of the Worm King spread like disease. Mortal kings feared him, and with good reason. Manimarco didn't conquer with armies of men. He raised his from the dirt. Whole villages vanished, their souls bound in crystal. He turned once loyal mages into undead thralls. Yet he didn't rule from a throne. He moved like a shadow, spreading fear through rumors, vanishing before his enemies could act. But his ambition didn't stop with mortal power. He sought to become a god. When the warp in the west shattered time across the Iliac Bay, legends say Manimarco used the chaos to perform his final rite. Somehow, in a moment both real and not, he split. One part of him remained in Mundus, a lich with a crown of bones and an army of corpses. The other ascended, becoming a god of undeath, a shadow on the edge of reality known as the King of Worms. The Mages Guild hunted his followers for centuries, but never found his core. In Morrowind, he worked in secret, pulling strings from the dark. In High Rock, entire towers of necromancers pledged themselves to his name, and always he watched. In Oblivion, we hear of his return, not through banners or war, but through fear. Guild halls fall silent. Scholars disappear. Necromancers whisper his name with reverence. The player, a simple recruit in the Mages Guild, climbs the ranks only to learn the truth. Manimarco walks again. Not just as a lich, but as something worse. He invades the Arcane University. He murders Archmage Traven's agents. And when finally confronted in the ruined altars of Echo Cave, we face the undead king himself. He isn't loud, he doesn't rant, he just tells us how small we are. That death is not an end, that he has seen the space between worlds, and it obeys him. He attacks not with swords, but with silence, draining the soul and twisting the flesh. Defeating him ends the threat to the guild, but not the legend, because Manimarco is never truly gone. In Skyrim, centuries later, necromancers still speak of him. In hidden rituals and dark tombs, they call on his name. Some claim to see him in dreams. Others vanish seeking his sanctum. In the Dawnguard DLC, the Soul Cairn holds echoes of his power, soul fragments warped by rituals that mimic his. And in later tales, like the ones told in Necrom, we learn of his god form, still whispering through time, guiding new servants, waiting. What makes Manimarco powerful isn't just his magic. It's his patience, his reach. He plays the long game. He survived more than one death, more than one age. His spells twist life and soul alike. His influence corrupts guilds, cities, even planes of oblivion. Mortals chase power for thrones. Manimarco chases the secret laws of existence. In gameplay, we face him directly in Oblivion, in Echo Cave, where the Mages Guild storyline ends with a final duel against him. It's there we stop his ritual and end his latest attempt at domination. But his legend stretches far beyond that one battle. We fight him not just because he's evil, but because if we don't, he wins by default. His power lies in decay, in the slow spread of undeath, in the idea that even death has a master, and for Manimarco, that master has always been himself. That's why he stands as one of the most powerful enemies in Elder Scrolls history, not because of any one battle, but because every grave is a gate he might use, and every shadow might carry his name. Next up, I picked Vivek. In the time before the world was settled, when the Chimer were still young and their gods walked among them, a being rose who would change the shape of Morrowind forever. His name was Vivek, and he was not born like other mortals. He was formed through myth, prophecy, and power. Part of the tribunal, the living gods of the Dunmer, Vivek held within him the balance of warrior and poet, of sword and scripture. His rise began in the shadow of the heart of Lorkhan, when he, Almalexia, and Sotasil used its divine power to become gods. But unlike the others, Vivek embraced contradiction. He was both man and god, truth and lie, mercy and wrath. He built a city in his name, and sat in his palace among the people, offering wisdom in riddles and ruling with grace and mystery. The Dunmer worshipped him, not only because he protected them, but because he understood them. He fought their battles, wrote their hymns, and guided them through centuries of change. But his story isn't simple. Before he was divine, he was mortal. Before he was worshipped, he was questioned. Some said he was born of a union between a Chimer woman and a Daedric lord. Others believed he shaped himself through will and belief. All agreed he was unlike anyone else. As the god king of the Dunmer, Vivek led armies, wrote holy texts, and forged alliances with strange powers. He walked through time, spoke with monsters, and even bargained with the Daedra. His words could inspire or destroy. He wielded a blade that could kill gods and a voice that could bend the minds of mortals. In the Red Year, long after the events of Morrowind, the tribunal fell. But during the time of the Neravarin, Vivek still held his throne. When the player meets him, he's calm, almost tired. He knows his time is ending. He speaks of fate, of guilt, of choices made long ago. The heart of Lorikhan, the source of his divinity, was dying, and so was his power. Yet, even weakened, Vivek remained one of the most dangerous beings in Tamriel, not because of brute strength, but because of how many layers he held. He knew the future, the past, and the weight of his own lies. He invited the Nerevarine not just to help him, but to understand him. In Morrowind, you can confront him in his palace, at the heart of Vivek City. Whether as an ally or enemy, he remains composed, powerful, and strange. He speaks like a poet, fights like a god, and watches the world with eyes that have seen too much. His people revere him, even when they question his truth. He has done terrible things, but always with reason. He's a ruler who burned cities to save nations, who hid the truth to protect belief. In battle, if it comes to that, he wields the full might of his divine power. His blade strikes with precision and force. His spells are sharp, shaped by centuries of mastery. Vivek is powerful not just because of the heart or his divine status, but because he understands the world. He writes his own myths and lives them. He reshapes reality with words, with will, with faith. He's not bound by rules, because he helped make them. And even when the tribunal's time ends, his story does not. In Elder Scrolls Online, we see him again, earlier in time. Still divine, still brilliant, still playing with fate. His enemies are many. Assassins, Daedra, false gods, but Vivek endures. He is fire and water, spear and scroll. A being who defies definition and invites worship not just through fear, but fascination. In the game Morrowind, we encounter Vivek in his city, seated in a palace built above a sacred moonlit, suspended by his power. Whether we challenge him or serve him, he remains one of the strongest characters in the series. His defeat is possible, but never simple. It's not about overpowering him, but understanding the world that made him. We fight him if we choose to, because his power casts a shadow over everything. And that power, both divine and dangerous, makes him unforgettable. Vivek isn't just a character, he's a question. A mirror held up to the player, to the world, and to what it means to be a god. And no matter the outcome, his legacy stands, etched into stone, sung in verses, and whispered across time. Let's also talk about Zurin Arctis. In a time when empires clashed and the divine still walked among mortals, there was a man named Zurin Arctis. He was more than a mage, more than a servant. He was the imperial battle mage to Tiber Septim, the man who would become Talos. Zurin was loyal, powerful, and silent, a shadow behind the throne, but the empire's rise was never clean. It was forged in blood, betrayal, and myth. At the heart of that myth stands the Underking. Some say he was Zurin Arctis himself. Others say he was Wulfharth, the ancient tongue of the north. Maybe he was both. Maybe the truth was torn apart when magic bent the rules of life and death. What matters is what he became. The Underking was no longer truly alive, but he didn't die either. He lingered, a spirit trapped by broken promises, and a heart that should never have been touched. The Mantella was the key. A soul gem powerful enough to hold divine energy, it was meant to fuel the Numidium, a giant brass god built to crush enemies of the Empire. Zurin Arctis, in his loyalty, tried to bind its power, but the process tore him apart. The result was a ghost that remembered too much and a king without a throne. In death, he became something else. Not a lich, not a wraith, but a force. the Underking. He watched as the empire marched on, as Tiber Septim was crowned, as the world forgot him. But he did not forget. In the centuries that followed, the Underking became a name whispered in fear. He did not hunger for power. He wanted only the return of his soul, the Mantella. Without it, he was stuck, neither spirit nor man, bound by ancient failure. In Daggerfall, the warp in the west shattered time and space. The Numidium returned, and with it, the Mantella. Many wanted it. Kings, princes, Daedric princes, all trying to bend it to their will. But the Underking came too. His goal wasn't conquest, it was peace, a final rest. He reached for the Mantella, not to rule, but to die. When the player meets the Underking in Daggerfall, it's not in a throne room or fortress, but in the depths of legend. His tomb is hidden, watched by death and silence. He speaks with the weariness of centuries. He offers a deal, not with malice, but with desperation. Help him retrieve the Mantella, and he will be gone. Forever. But make no mistake, he is powerful. He commands the dead like a general commands soldiers. Necromancers fear him. His presence crushes lesser wills. The magic that made him was beyond mortal skill, tied to the very fabric of divine energy. In Daggerfall, we see what's left of him, but even that fragment is strong enough to warp the outcome of history. The game shows how many versions of reality play out at once, all shaped by who controls the Mantella. In some, the Underking gets it and vanishes. In others, he's denied again. His influence is wide, even if he doesn't raise a blade. What makes him dangerous isn't a single spell or weapon. It's the depth of his connection to the myth of the Empire, to the gods, to the very idea of what power means. He bridges the gap between mortal ambition and divine cost. That's what makes him one of the most powerful enemies ever faced. He doesn't fight for dominance, he fights to end his own torment. That kind of focus makes him more dangerous than those who crave thrones. In the game Daggerfall, we meet the Underking during the main quest. His tomb can be found depending on choices made, but his presence is always felt. We fight him, or help him, to settle a piece of history that refuses to die. His power isn't just necromancy. It's legacy, memory, and the echo of betrayal. That's why he matters. That's why he's feared. And that's why, even centuries later, the shadow of the Underking still lingers. When you look at the most powerful beings in the Elder Scrolls universe, it quickly becomes clear that strength takes many forms. Alduin stands above them all, as a force beyond mortal reckoning. He's the World Eater, a god destined to bring about the end of the world so that it can be born anew. His power comes not just from raw strength, but from his role in the cosmic cycle of destruction and rebirth. Facing Alduin is confronting the weight of fate itself, a challenge that few can even imagine surviving. But Alduin's dominance is matched by others who wield different kinds of power. Dagoth-Ur, for example, taps into divine magic tied directly to the heart of Lorkhan. His tonal magic bends reality around him, shaping the world to his will. He is more than just a villain. He is a living god who threatens the balance of existence. Dagoth-Ur's influence spreads through his followers and his own terrifying presence in the Ghost Fence. Then there is Mehrunes Dagon, a Daedric prince whose power is raw destruction. Unlike Alduin or Dagoth-Ur, Mehrunes Dagon's strength is expressed through cataclysmic violence. His invasions come not as a slow, inevitable fate, but as violent storms tearing across Tamriel. Though the player rarely faces him directly, the threat he poses is immense, and his avatars carry the full weight of his divine wrath. For sheer physical might, Karstag is often seen as unmatched. This giant Frost King stands taller and stronger than most, wielding brute force that can topple armies. His strength lies in endurance and raw power rather than magic or divine status. In that way, he represents the peak of mortal strength, an enemy whose challenge is in surviving the storm of his attacks. The undead and necromancer lords bring a different flavor of power to the table. The Underking, ruling from his tomb in Daggerfall, commands legions of undead with dark necromantic magic. His semi-divine status and mastery of death make him a force that defies normal understanding. Manimarco, known as the King of Worms, is another figure who embodies dark magic and ambition. His rise from mortal necromancer to godlike lich has made him a looming threat in multiple games. His control over death and undeath threatens the living world in ways that few can match. Mirak is a unique figure among these powerful beings. Once the first Dragonborn, he blended dragon power with Daedric magic to become something beyond both. His mastery of shouts and dark sorcery puts him in a class apart from ordinary mortals or even most gods. Encountering Mirak is stepping into a world where mortal and divine powers collide in unexpected ways. Vivek offers a more complex kind of power. As one of the tribunal gods, he blends divine magic with mortal experience. He rules as a warrior poet, wielding both sword and scripture to shape the fate of Morrowind. His power is immense but tied to belief and the heart of Loricon, making him less straightforward than the others. His presence is as much about wisdom and leadership as raw might. Finally, the Ebony Warrior stands apart from these divine and magical beings. He is mortal, but his skill and discipline are legendary. His power comes from mastering every weapon, every technique, every aspect of combat. While he does not possess magic or divine force, his presence is a reminder that raw human will and training can reach incredible heights. His challenge to the Dragonborn is about testing skill to the limit, showing that strength doesn't always need supernatural help. Taken together, these figures represent different peaks of power in Tamriel. Alduin is the ultimate cosmic force, destined to remake the world through destruction. Dagoth-Ur and Mehrunes Dagon show how divine and Daedric powers can twist reality or bring chaos. Karstag reminds us that sheer strength can be terrifying without magic. The Underking and Manimarco bring death and necromancy into the mix, commanding forces beyond the living. Mirak blurs lines between dragon and Daedric power, and Vivek blends divinity with mortal wisdom. The Ebony Warrior proves mortal skill can still reach legendary levels. Each of these enemies offers a different kind of challenge and threat, reflecting the rich variety of power in the Elder Scrolls universe. Their stories show that strength isn't one thing, but many things combined, shaped by magic, fate, will, and history. Facing any of them means stepping into a world where the stakes are always high, where the line between mortal and divine blurs, and where every battle can change the fate of Tamriel.